All right. I'm going full Tavis Smiley mode. Welcome to the Philly Forward Forum. That is a lot to say fast. Real estate as a portal to change. My name is Rashaad Lambert. I'm the Senior Vice President of Culture and Community at Forbes and the founder of Forbes of Culture. And I've known this guy that I will be speaking with today for a pretty long time, Tayyib Smith. So, Tayyib, thank you for being here at your own conference. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rashaad, for joining me. And it's not my conference; it's the collective's. I wouldn't be here without Sandra, Stephen, the 7 other members, like Leon Caldwell, Anthony Miles. Just there's so many people who actually humble me because they have more experience than me, and they trusted Sandra and I to go along on this ride. And we've accomplished a tremendous amount in a relatively short period of time, and we got a long way to go.
And shout out to you for actually being Fireside during a Fireside chat. I don't think I've ever seen anybody be Fireside during a Fireside chat.
So my mama raised me right, and why don't we just call it a chat if I'm not gonna have a fireplace?
You follow directions.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So for those who don't know, bring us up to speed. I want to get into the Tayyib story. Kind of like walk us up to where we are now with Smith and Roller.
Oh, so Rashaad, I've had such a wild ride to be a serial entrepreneur, and I haven't had a traditional path in anything. So fortunate enough to be partners in Smith and Roller Holdings, which is a partnership between me and Megan Denneberg and Jacob Roller. Jacob being a more experienced real estate developer with 15 years, Megan and I being partners for 15 years in a company called Little Giant Creative. So although I've only been in real estate for 7 years, my first real estate deal was a space in Center City that you've been to called Pipeline Workspaces. And my good friend David Grasso was the first person I went to, I think in 2011, when Megan and I had expressed a desire to create a co-working space. And he was the one person I knew who knew the most about real estate, being a second generation real estate developer. So, just to skip steps, one of my mentors told me that this isn't brain surgery and it's not rocket science. He taught me how to do a sweat equity deal. I think in like 2013, my first deal was a $2 million deal for a 20,000 square foot space, being Pipeline. And fast forward 7 years later, Jacob, Megan, and I have 23 deals at different stages of development around the city. We partner with Shift Capital on a building, I believe it's 115,000 square feet, 130,000 square feet with 115 apartments and 30,000 square feet of commercial space. And we have our own concept called If Lab, which is a physical incubator space, basically an entrepreneurship hub, similar to Leon Caldwell's Steamy Workspaces, but different. And our second location we plan for that is at 52nd and Arch, 53 North 52nd Street. And I have some other projects in the pipeline. So I'm really fortunate that I know how to work with teams. I'm aggressive. People have said that I have irrational confidence, but hey, it's true. But when I want to go after something, I'm a competitive businessman, and I'm a formidable businessman. I have a reputation of punching above my weight class across sector, and I live by that.
So for those who are familiar with the city of Philadelphia, they know that the first deal that you mentioned is in Center City. But where are some of the other deals located outside of, you mentioned, about 52nd and Arch, which is a part of the Black Mecca in West Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Well, I know starting in Center City is a part of like playing the game. You got to get your foot in the game. But why did you intentionally move into these other spaces, and how important is that?
So I'll go backwards to go forward. So Megan and I, well, my first business was at 7th and Willow, which was in a space I shared with the Roots, Larry Gold, and many other organizations. And I moved into what was a co-working space in Northern Liberties, which when I was a kid, they used to call it North Philly. And, to be frank, there were large nonprofit clients in the city that I couldn't get to meet with me when I was in Northern Liberties. All right. They would come down for like Friday afternoon drinks, but, it would be hard to close a deal. And when I changed my address to Center City, I had a different class of, let's say, clients who started to take our company seriously. From there, Megan and I had created an incubator through a Night Cities Challenge grant called the Institute of Hip Hop Entrepreneurship. And we mentored about 24 entrepreneurs in our space in Center City. And there were some learnings in that endeavor, just about, regardless if you bring people into, frankly, a fancy space in Center City, we live in communities where we're dealing with displacement and scarcity on a daily basis. So fast forward to today, IFLab is kind of like the physical manifestation of the software of the Institute of Hip Hop Entrepreneurship. And that's in a neighborhood that has 51% unemployment. All right. So in real estate, we have a thing called AMI, which stands for Area Median Income. What a lot of people wouldn't know or wouldn't really think about is that in a neighborhood like Harrogate or Kensington, on some blocks, the AMI is $17,000 to $20,000 a year. All right. Hold on to that for a second. $17,000 to $20,000 a year in the 21st century economy. And we all know what it takes to live in a city in the modern economy. All right. So if you're talking about workforce development, if you're talking about affordable housing, the AMI numbers are for people who make, let's say, $85,000 to $120,000 a year sometimes, right? Because the AMI is not actually for the neighborhood. The way the AMI works in cities is we're judging areas where people might have an income at best $34,000 or $1,000 a year, but you're on a supposed meritocratic market with people in the suburbs, and the prices and ranging from houses can go into the millions, right? So to bring that back to the reality of trying to bring people into the 21st century economy, almost, virtually all of our projects always think about a through the line perspective, a holistic perspective. How are you thinking about people in the neighborhood? So change always has the potential of displacing people because you're going to increase the property values. But how are you coming into the neighborhood? Are you thoughtfully coming into the neighborhood? Are you bringing programming into the neighborhood that speaks to people? Are you mentoring people? Are you creating opportunities for their own businesses that can have some level of sustainability in community? So another example of that, and I'll dovetail for a second, is through our relationship with Shift Capital in Harrogate, which is 6 blocks from KNA, Kensington Allegheny, for those who aren't in Philadelphia, which is probably written about mostly through the lens of the heroin epidemic or crime. Right. So within that community, if I had not been visiting there on a regular basis for the last two and a half years, I wouldn't have the lens from frankly, a human perspective of how many children live in that neighborhood, how many elderly people live in that neighborhood. And when we talk about Black and brown communities or marginalized communities, we look at them through, frankly, as I say often on repeat, to quote Toni Morrison, through a white gaze. And when you go to that neighborhood, in rush hour, you've got children, you got actually commuters and tourists for the drug economy. But then you also have middle class and lower income people who work very hard, who will undergird the pension funds of our cities, but aren't thought of in terms of beautification projects, health and wellness projects, to Leon's comments earlier about, servicing health and wellness versus servicing sickness.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways that as developers, we can think and be thoughtful and be holistic about how we're bringing products and services or capital into communities. And I think that's definitely something we attempt to do at Smith & Roller. And it's definitely, I would believe, that something Sandra, Stephen, and myself declare a mandate to be a part of the collective.
So I remember, I think it was Jay-Z that said it when he said gentrify your own hood before those people do it, right?
You're gonna make me debate Jay-Z.
No.
Because I think that was one of the stupidest lines we've had in years. But go on.
But think about it, right? So you're from West Philly. I'm from West Philly. Mm-hmm. some of the projects that I've seen you do recently and that I know that you're working on, I know are in that specific area. Mm-hmm. Is there, outside of what you already kind of addressed, is there a specific reasoning for bringing these types of projects into this area? It's not like you're building, you know, a Corman Suites or something like that. It's like a, you know, is this something that you are intentionally bringing into the neighborhood? If so, why?
Right. So I'm a very strategic person, strategic AF, as the people like to say. And, you know, you have to be thoughtful about what you're bringing to a project, into a neighborhood. So this is, the project you're speaking about is 53 North 52nd Street. That would be the second location for IF Lab. IF standing for the possibilities of IF, but also Idea Factory. Right. So approximately 3,500 square feet of that building would be an entrepreneurship hub where we would have incubators, accelerators, and look at mentoring and putting people through ecosystems where they can have access to actual equity funding. On top of that, it would be a contemporary shared workspace. Right? And sometimes in the nomenclature of shared workspace, co-working, a lot of things get lost. But within the modern economy, you're going to see a lot of ways that office space will evolve. Right? Larger companies are starting to think about having some people work remotely, but you still need a central home. You still need a space for people to meet up. You still need a space for events. So we're creating a 5-story entrepreneurship hub with a multiplicity of resources, but we actually need contemporary space to bring the lower income, the middle income, and the upper income African American, you know, contemporary practitioner in a space that's aspirational, that's desirable, so we can bring more mixed income people who look like us onto the corridor, right? So we're not algorithmically displacing people through things that, you know, frankly, are going to change the AMI. It's going to change the footprint. It's going to change the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I think we can change the aesthetic for the neighborhood and still be progressive, still be Black. And, you know, frankly, it breaks my heart. You know, I used to commute from 52nd and Market on the L to Montgomery County to get education, you know, from 8th grade throughout high school. I eventually got my GED when I was in the military, right? But as a child, I commuted an hour and a half both ways from West Philadelphia into the suburbs to get education, right? So my reasoning that a lot of my work is coming back to West Philadelphia is because if not me, then who? The people who, the capital is going to come. Projects are going to come, change is going to come. But if you don't have people who have a holistic perspective, an empathetic perspective on what change looks like, and you're trying to bring people in ways that can actually give them agency and control over their futures, you will have an algorithmic, frankly, neoliberal, neocolonialist perspective of parasitic capital. It doesn't have an imagination for us from a space of investment. It has an imagination for us to come through the poor door, or imagination for us to be, you know, at the lowest wage entry job, or sometimes we're even in the PowerPoint, but we're not in the capital stack. You know, there's pictures of us in the project, but we're not in the project with agency. You know, we're not deciding how the project, the services are going to operate in the communities that we've held up when other people didn't think they were desirable.
I have a follow-up question to that, but this is more so, I know there's people watching them, but this is more so for me, right? But I mean, they can listen to. For emerging, you know, developers, you talked about your first deal being a sweat equity deal. A lot of people don't know the difference between the two, but are you creating spaces for other emerging, you know, developers to enter in that same way? And if so, like, what are some of those pathways that may exist or may be in development?
Well, I think that the collective is a solution to that. You know, like all the developers in the collective are not in the same stage of their growth, but we operate as one, and to some perspective. We're looking equitably about how do we raise capital and disperse capital into our members' projects. We're also actively lobbying to have a positive effect on public policy in regards to how people look and react to our neighborhoods. Or, you know, if people are going to partner on, you know, multi-million or billion-dollar capital projects in the city of Philadelphia that's 43% Black, I mean, who are you consulting with? Who are your procurement contracts with? Who are your consultants? Anybody who's ever heard me on a panel within the last probably 6 months, you always hear me say 500 approximate working African-American women architects in the United States. That's like number of people in the NBA. You turn on the TV, you will see a lot of images that make it look like the NBA is an accessible career, right? Every building in the city of Philadelphia that's under construction needs an external architect and an interior architect, right? You got 500 African-American women working as architects in the United States with all the brilliance that exists. And that's the demographic that's like breaking all numbers in terms of entrepreneurship. So, to pull back, the real estate industry, writ large across sector, from brokerage to real estate development to investment capital to just the construction trades, all have abominable numbers in regards to Black and brown participation. And we've been making excuses for generations about why we can't make change to that from the perspective of scarcity or what's wrong with the Black community, and never giving intentionality to deconstructing the public policies that were created to give us inequality with intentionality, right? So there's a gaslighting experience of constantly interacting with white-led organizations to say, jump a little higher, try a little harder. How come you don't have the capacity? How come you don't have the capital? Well, if you have been having me perform with weights on my ankles and cinder blocks on my back, while you're able to eat better food and run carefree, and you got aunts and uncles to go to for a capital raise, and then you pretend like it's a fair fight, at some point I got to call foul. And then I've been calling foul my whole life, but now I punch a little harder, I know a little more, and I got a stronger team of people with me to punch with.
A louder voice. Let me ask you this. This kind of like took me in a different direction, but a lot of times I think this was most popularized by, I think it was the Wells Fargo CEO saying that like, oh, I will hire more Black people if I can find them, right? And a lot of white-led organizations usually use that as an excuse as to not involve Black and brown people in the process. And you just mentioned that there are 500 African-American women architects in the United States, I guess.
I mean, there's probably more than that, but currently, that's the estimate.
Yeah. So how difficult is it for you to find? I mean, because they must be having a problem with this. So how difficult is it for you to find African-American people to hire in your development projects?
No, that's not difficult at all. I don't have the gaze of structural white supremacy that I'm looking through, right?
Yeah.
So I have relationships, across sector with Black and brown people who just need some people to get out of their way, versus pretending like there's a deficiency or a capacity issue within the Black community. There's just too many statistics, too many studies within anchor institutions that don't even use their own data within from their student body to say like, how can we make change, right? There is a grand gaslighting and constantly saying to people who have intergenerational public policies, shackling them, right, to say, why aren't you competing better? And frankly, statistically, like I think like 85% of white people in the United States might know one or two Black people, and I would seriously, at least. Wait, and when we say no, like to be frank, I live in the 7th Ward, which is, white people call Rittenhouse. It was one of the oldest neighborhoods in the United States where people of African descent have lived since William Penn settled in Philadelphia. Right. The level of ignorance about the Black experience, viewed through the Black experience versus an American experience or American history, is like an outrageous thing that we have to temper our our justified rage to every day just to be functioning. And to quote James Baldwin, to know your history and to be aware and to be conscious as an African American will keep you in a state of rage constantly. All right. So I just don't have patience for people when they make up excuses of why they don't do what is mandated by law. And as much as people like to quote MLK, one of his last books is Chaos and Community. And he has a phrase in there, I think in the last couple chapters, where he says, if people will just follow the laws that are already on the books, we don't need any more task force. We don't need any more diversity and inclusion galas, dinners. Like the laws have been there in place for generations, but we make up excuses every 3 to 5 years about why we can't make the mandates.
I couldn't agree more. And that kind of leads me back into to something that we mentioned earlier, and I want to dig a little bit deeper. Well, what you can share. You said you have 23 projects that are in development, and a lot of times people always utilize the politics as an excuse as to why they can't go into certain areas, or the lack of community support. And we've seen in recent years in Philadelphia, people try to go into communities and go into neighborhoods, and there is resistance because of the type of things that they are trying to bring there. So you spoke about 3 projects so far. What are some of the other projects that you have in development? And I guess what are the purposes? What you can share, things you can share.
All right. So, I mentioned 53 North 52nd Street. I mentioned J Central, which is 3400 J Street. You
didn't get into that one, though. J Central.
J Central is 3400 J Street. That's the one in Kensington, Harrogate, in partnership with Ship Capital. 115 apartments, 30,000 square feet of mixed-use commercial. Cafe Roasters is opening their first brick-and-mortar coffee shop there, and If Lab will be headquartered there as well. We also have a project not far from 40th and Lancaster with People's Emergency Center, Mount Vernon CDC, and Habitat for Humanity to do about, I believe, 30 apartments, mixed income, but I think 40% affordable. And
40%, you said?
I believe so, if I remember correctly. All right. But to go back to some of the challenges you described, I'm really fortunate. I have partners, and we do a range of projects that are all impact focused. All right. And I tend to partner with other organizations or other real estate developers that have site control and bring innovation or creativity to the project and our ideas. But it is complicated dealing with community, because community has a lot of justifiable mistrust to change. And if you always see change coming to your community without you designed in the benefits of the change, you have justifiable reasons to have distrust or caution. All right. And if you aren't thinking about that with some level of empathy or sensitivity, then you're going to catch hell from community. I have caught hell from community, right? Some of the same people who gave me very hard times in, community meetings, zoning meetings. I think I've won some of them over. I think I've rubbed some people the wrong way, but I definitely am an authentic real estate developer. I'm an authentic third-generation Philadelphian, and sometimes you don't have to agree with somebody, but you can find that you have shared end goal, right? And when you find out you have shared end goal, you can start to figure out ways to build trust, right? So we ain't got to like each other, but if we have a shared end goal and some level of trust and authenticity, we can work together, right? And I don't need to be everybody's friend, but I ain't going nowhere, and I'm a very tenacious person. But I also know how to put together teams. I know how to work collaboratively. I know how to be thoughtful about putting together a team that can bring innovation to a project. And I'm committed to the work. So at some point, you will find allies to hold the rope with you and drive it home.
So your experience as a Black man going into these communities, and like Stephen's experience as a Black man and Sandra's experience as a Black woman, is going to be different than white-led developers coming into these same communities and trying to do similar things. Also, you might be aiming for different outcomes. So what I wanted to ask you
to add a little nuance to that.
Oh, go ahead.
So you would think that, but like change still means change, right? Mm-hmm. And I have to hold some space and be honest that there are things within displacement, gentrification, capitalism that go beyond class and race. All right. So sometimes people have a reason to distrust me just as much as they would distrust a white person. Right. And if I'm not honest about that history, if I'm not honest about the need to build trust, then I'm just going to be just disingenuous as the next person, regardless of my skin tone. Right? And I have to have enough respect for community to be aware of that just because I'm a Black identified person or a person of African descent does not give me an extra credit that means I can just bowl through a community.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one of my grandmother's favorite phrases was "all skin folk ain't kinfolk." And that rings true more than we even know. A couple weeks ago, or maybe I think it was last week or a week before last, I had a conversation with you and two other members of the collective. For those that missed it, one of the questions that I asked, and I kind of want to rehash this here before I wrap up, which is when you are coming together, there's an example that you are setting as three Black people coming together in a historically Black city like Philadelphia. So what is the legacy, I guess, of the collective? What is your mission, and what is it that you want to see changed? Like, why are you doing this, basically?
Oh, I don't want the next generation of entrepreneurs to have barriers or walls that I have. I want to build infrastructure that can be intergenerational. I want to create new capital products that make it normalized to fund Black and brown entrepreneurs, Black and brown real estate developers. I want safe, walkable neighborhoods where we don't have to have the levels of gun violence that we've experienced throughout my adult life in Philadelphia. Like, we're in an uptick now, but if you think of the downticks, it still wasn't good for Black identified.
Yeah.
Particularly Black people from 16 to 29 in the city of Philadelphia since 1992. We have always had bad numbers, right? And that was before COVID, and that was before Black Lives Matter. So for me, I think we have to have a transformative appetite and an impatience with the normality of, Black life not meaning the same as any other ethnicity, right? Like, little Black boys and girls should not have it normalized that we have the rates of graduation in our high schools in certain census tracts, right? We're 60 years past Brown versus the Board of Education, and we have still not ever got any level of parity in regions in regards to Black education, white education, and to be frank, just marginalized audiences in general. Afro-Latino boys in the city of Philadelphia do worse than Black boys. Cambodian boys, who, they're the next generation of people who came over and in the 1970s to Philadelphia, do very poorly. And I think there are certain stereotypes about the model minority that make a lot of people fall by the wayside. The average, I think nationally, the average white person, it's median is like 57, Black and Asian 26, Hispanic or Latinx 9 years old, right? Corporations have an understanding of that. If our bureaucracies, if our capital assets allocators don't, it affects everyone's health and wellness and well-being. And if there's anything that the pandemic showed us, is that we are on one planet. This is one rock, right? You can't spend your way out of getting away from, the diseases of inequality, right? If you can't think holistically about our cities, we are all in peril.
Yeah. So I want to wrap up with this. You led me. It's like you read these questions or something. You led me into my last question. Today is Earth Day. I think that's today. Somebody needs to fact check that for me. But because of that,
I'm still celebrating Luther Vandross's birthday.
No, I thought that was yesterday.
I said I'm still celebrating.
Oh, okay. Same. Okay. What are some of the environmental impacts? We talked a lot about the social impacts, but what are some of the environmental impacts of the projects that you're working on? And we'll close with this one.
Oh, well, that is a very deep and complex answer because we have so many projects. But I'll say this: because it kind of dovetails to how I feel like I need to carry or be representative as a businessman in the city. And I think also what the collective does for us as a community. There's a cliche in the Black community that you need to see it to be it, right? So if people think of technology, they think of three white men, Gates, Zuckerberg, one other dude, right? We all know them. When Sylvester Mobley from Coded by Kids or one of his mentees are pitching, people have a hard time imagining their capacity because they have a stereotype of what a tech entrepreneur looks like, right? So if the collective can change people's perception of what success looks like, what a person who raises $100 million looks like, or what a person who has $30 or $40 million in deal flow looks like, then I think we will have a positive impact on the city writ large, and particularly on the next generation of people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. I mean, I've already surpassed, frankly, the level of success that people imagined me to have the ability to do. So, the work that I need to do in the future is influence other people to shoot higher, demand more, and to be deeply engaged in your community. Like take this seriously. It is not just about us or your family or your block. This is an intergenerational fight. And a lot of people have done work that you don't know their name, but you're still standing on their shoulders. So if you don't have that spirit of liberation, get out the way, take a little office job, but let some other people lead the charge.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. I wish you had a mic to drop. I definitely appreciate it again. Thank you. There you go. Thank you. Thank you to the collective and to 17 Asset Management. Oh, go ahead, please. Are you on mute? I can't hear you.
I want to say that I'm really proud of you. Congratulations. I know that you're still in the area. I remember when you first started the Forbes of Culture brand, and I was like, what is Rashaad doing? And, 2-3 years later, for you being in partnership with Forbes out of the city of Philadelphia, when I know the types of barriers that stand in, Black men and women like ourselves and queer communities and just marginalized communities writ large. Philadelphia is a city that I've heard many people say eats its young. All right. So for you to stay here and prosper as your elder, I'm proud of you, brother.
I definitely appreciate that. And just like you said, is we have to show them that it's possible you don't have to go to LA or go to Atlanta or somewhere else. You can do it from right here,
Oh, you just made it done.
Even if they hate you while you do it. All right, man. Thanks again.